You wake up and before your feet touch the floor, your mind is already running. Messages waiting, responsibilities calling, a quiet pressure in your chest that you don't fully name. Nothing is technically wrong, yet something feels heavy. You wash your face, glance at the mirror, and move into the day carrying a tiredness that sleep didn't cure. Have you noticed this feeling before? That sense of being awake, yet not fully present. You pray, but your thoughts wander. You speak to people, but half of you is elsewhere. You look at the world, but it feels flat, as if the color has been drained from it. The days pass quickly, yet something inside you feels stuck. And you may wonder, why does life feel spiritually dim even when everything seems normal on the surface? Why does the heart feel distant even when faith is still there? This is not the kind of blindness we usually talk about. It is not the absence of sight. Your eyes work perfectly well. You can see faces, streets, screens, numbers, deadlines. But there is another kind of seeing, quieter, deeper, that often goes unnoticed. A way of perceiving meaning, presence, and wisdom beneath the surface of things. When that kind of seeing fades, life does not stop. It simply becomes noisier, faster, more tiring. Think about your day. How often is your attention pulled outward? Notifications interrupting silence, comparisons stealing contentment, worries about what might happen tomorrow overshadowing what is happening now. None of these things are dramatic. They are ordinary, and that is precisely why they are so powerful. They quietly shape how the heart looks at the world. Have you ever felt that your prayers reach your lips but not your chest? That your faith remains but the sweetness has thinned? That you believe yet something feels veiled? These moments are not failures. They are signals. Gentle signs pointing to an inner imbalance, not a lack of devotion but a lack of presence. We often assume that if something is spiritually wrong, it must look dramatic. A crisis, a loss, a visible fall. But sometimes the deepest disconnection arrives quietly, disguised as busyness. The heart becomes occupied, crowded with concerns, expectations, and unspoken fears. And when the heart is crowded, it cannot see clearly. Ask yourself honestly and without judgment, when was the last time you felt truly inwardly still? When did you last sit without reaching for something? Your phone, your thoughts, your plans. When did you last feel that gentle clarity where life made sense without explanation? This is where the journey begins, not in extraordinary visions or distant ideals, but in noticing what has become ordinary. The subtle blindness that hides inside distraction. The way the heart slowly turns outward until it forgets how to look within. And what if this dullness is not punishment, but invitation? What if it is not a sign that something is missing, but a sign that something deeper is waiting to be seen? Because long before modern life filled our days with noise, the sages spoke of a different way of seeing. A way rooted not in the eyes, but in the heart itself. And it is here, at this quiet edge of ordinary life, that Ibn Arabi begins his teaching. Ibn Arabi spoke to people who lived ordinary lives. Merchants, travelers, parents, seekers. He was not addressing monks hidden from the world, but hearts moving through markets, losses, hopes, and daily prayer. And what he taught them was quietly radical. That the human heart possesses a faculty of perception most people never activate, not because it is rare, but because it is neglected. He explained that the heart is not merely a container for emotions. It is not only the place where joy rises or sorrow settles. The heart, he said, is a means of knowing, a way of seeing, not seeing objects but seeing meaning, not seeing forms but recognizing truth behind forms. This is what he called the eye of the heart. This inner eye is not imagination and it is not fantasy. It does not replace reason or deny reality. Instead, it deepens reality. It allows a person to move through the same world as everyone else, yet perceive it differently. Two people can walk the same street, face the same hardship, hear the same words, yet one feels lost while the other feels guided. The difference is not circumstance, it is perception. According to Ibn Arabi, the heart has two orientations. One direction faces outward toward what is visible and measurable: success, failure, approval, fear, possessions, outcomes. The other direction faces inward toward what is unseen: intention, wisdom, divine nearness, meaning. Most of us live with the heart turned almost entirely outward. We react to what happens, chase what we desire, fear what we might lose. There is nothing sinful about this. It is human. But when the heart never turns inward, it forgets how to see deeply. Have you noticed how easily your inner state changes based on events you cannot control? One comment can lift you or ruin your mood. One delay can fill you with anxiety. One mistake can echo in your chest for days. Ibn Arabi would say this happens because the heart has handed its vision to the surface of life. It sees only what happens, not why it happens. The eye of the heart works differently. It does not ask first, "What did I gain or lose?" It asks, "What is being shown to me here?" It does not rush to judgment. It pauses. It listens. It recognizes that even difficulty can carry guidance and even comfort can carry a test. This is why Ibn Arabi insisted that nothing in life is random, not in a mystical sense but in a deeply intimate one. Events are not isolated accidents. They are encounters, invitations, messages shaped perfectly for the heart receiving them. But a heart distracted by noise cannot read these messages, just as a mirror covered in dust cannot reflect light. You may wonder, if this eye exists within me, why do I not experience it more often? Why does it feel distant? Ibn Arabi's answer is both simple and unsettling. The eye of the heart has not closed, it has been covered. Covered by habits of attention, covered by fear of uncertainty, covered by attachment to outcomes, covered by the constant demand to explain everything instead of allowing meaning to unfold. The heart sees when it is allowed to be present, when it is not dragged endlessly between past regret and future worry, when it is not burdened by the need to control what was never meant to be controlled. And this brings us to the image Ibn Arabi returned to again and again. The heart, he said, is like a mirror. It does not create light, it reflects it. The light is always there. The question is whether the surface is clear enough to show it. So before we ask how to open the eye of the heart, we must ask something quieter and more honest. What has been settling on the mirror of your heart without you noticing? A mirror does not lose its purpose because it is covered. It simply stops reflecting. Ibn Arabi used this image to explain the state of the heart in a way that feels uncomfortably familiar. The heart does not become corrupted or broken when clarity fades. It becomes layered, buried beneath things that slowly gather, one unnoticed day at a time. Think about dust for a moment. It does not arrive loudly. It settles quietly. A thin layer today, another tomorrow. Over time, the mirror no longer shows what stands before it, not because the mirror changed, but because something else took its place on the surface. This is how the heart grows dim, not through one great failure, but through many small, unexamined habits. What is that dust made of in your life? It often looks ordinary, resentment that was never released, comparisons you didn't mean to make but kept repeating, the need to be right, the fear of being unseen, the habit of measuring your worth through results and reactions. None of these announce themselves as spiritual dangers. They feel practical, necessary, normal. And that is why they are so effective at dulling perception. You may still pray, you may still believe, but the heart feels heavy, distracted, easily disturbed. You ask Allah for guidance, yet you feel restless even when nothing is missing. Have you ever noticed how quickly peace leaves when control is threatened? How the heart tightens when expectations are not met? These are not random emotional shifts. They are signs of a mirror asking to be cleaned. Ibn Arabi reminded his students that the problem is never the absence of light. Divine guidance does not switch on and off depending on your mood or performance. The light is constant. What changes is the surface that receives it. When the heart is coated with pride, anger, greed, or heedlessness, it cannot reflect what is already present. And perhaps the most subtle dust of all is distraction. The heart today is rarely silent. It is pulled outward by endless input, images, opinions, worries, comparisons. Even when you are alone, your attention is divided. Your body may be still, but your heart is racing elsewhere. How can a mirror reflect clearly when it is constantly being touched, moved, and smudged? Ask yourself this gently. How much of your day is spent reacting, and how little is spent receiving? How often does the heart pause long enough to notice what is actually happening within it? When was the last time you allowed a feeling to arise without immediately judging it or pushing it away? The dust on the heart is not always sinful. Often, it is simply unexamined. It builds when life is lived at a pace that leaves no room for inward attention, when prayer becomes routine rather than encounter, when remembrance becomes sound rather than presence. This is why Ibn Arabi spoke of the heart as something that must be tended to, not fixed. The heart does not need replacement. It needs care. It needs space. It needs a return to stillness. And once this is understood, a natural question arises, not with urgency but with quiet longing. If dust is what veils the heart, then what removes it? What restores the mirror without forcing it? What allows the heart to see again without effort or strain? To answer this, Ibn Arabi did not begin with grand techniques or rare knowledge. He began with something far more intimate. He spoke of remembrance, not as repetition but as return. There is a story often shared among those who walk the inward path. It is simple, almost ordinary, and that is why it endures. A man once came to a teacher with a familiar complaint. He was not irreligious. He prayed, he fasted, he believed. Yet something felt distant. His heart felt dry, as if faith had become effort rather than ease. Sitting across from the teacher, he spoke honestly. "I worship," he said, "but I do not feel close. I search for signs, but nothing answers me. Where is God?" The teacher did not rush to respond. He did not quote a verse or offer comfort too quickly. He looked at the man for a long moment, as if listening not to his words but to what was beneath them. Then, quietly, he placed his hand over his own chest and said, "Closer than your breath." The man frowned. "If that is true," he replied, "why do I not feel it?" The teacher's hand remained where it was. "Because," he said, "something stands in between." "What?" the man asked. The teacher did not name one thing. He named many. Pride that tightens the heart without being noticed. Fear that demands certainty where trust is needed. Attachment that confuses love with possession. Heedlessness that fills every silence with noise. "These," he said, "are not walls outside you. They are veils you carry within." This exchange is not dramatic. There is no miracle, no sudden vision. And yet, it captures something Ibn Arabi returned to again and again. The problem is rarely distance. It is obstruction. The heart does not fail to see because the truth is hidden far away. It fails to see because it is looking through layers it no longer questions. Have you noticed how easy it is to search outward when something feels missing? We look for answers in explanations, in achievements, in reassurance from others. We assume that if clarity has faded, it must be restored by adding something new. But Ibn Arabi gently reversed this assumption. He taught that the heart sees again not by acquiring, but by removing. This is why he described the heart as a horizon rather than a container. A horizon does not need to be filled. It needs to be unobstructed. When clouds gather, the sky does not disappear. It is simply veiled. And when the clouds pass, nothing new arrives. What was always there becomes visible again. Think about your own life. When clarity has appeared, did it always come from effort? Or did it often come after release, after surrendering an argument, after letting go of an expectation, after admitting weakness, after allowing yourself to be quiet without explanation? The heart recognizes truth most easily when it is no longer defending itself. Ibn Arabi spoke of the heart as the meeting place between the visible and the unseen. A doorway, not a destination. But a doorway can be blocked without being broken. And when blocked, everything beyond it feels distant, even if it is just on the other side. So the question is no longer whether the infinite is near. It is whether the heart has room to recognize nearness, whether the mirror is being asked to reflect while still covered, whether the horizon is being searched while standing behind clouds. And once this is understood, the path forward becomes clearer, not louder, not heavier, but simpler. Because if the heart is veiled by what it carries, then the next step is not to search farther, but to lighten what is being held. And this is where Ibn Arabi begins to show what happens when even a small clearing appears, when the heart, just for a moment, becomes still enough to reflect. Ibn Arabi asked his listeners to reconsider something they took for granted. The heart, he said, is not small in the way we assume. Physically, yes, it fits within the chest, but in its capacity, it is vast, vast enough to carry grief that lasts decades, vast enough to hold love that reshapes an entire life, vast enough to be wounded by a single sentence or healed by a single act of sincerity. If the heart can contain all of this, why do we hesitate to believe it can also contain awareness of the infinite? This is not philosophy meant to impress. It is an observation drawn from lived experience. Think about a moment that changed you forever, a loss that altered your priorities, a realization that made old ambitions feel hollow, a quiet certainty that arrived without logic but never left. Where did these shifts occur? Not in the mind alone. They settled in the heart. They changed how you saw the world without changing the world itself. Ibn Arabi described the heart as a horizon, a meeting point. On one side stands the visible world, time, form, cause, and effect. On the other stands the unseen, meaning, wisdom, divine nearness. The heart is where these two touch. When the heart is clear, you do not escape reality. You understand it. You live inside it without being swallowed by it. This is why the infinite does not overwhelm the heart when it is perceived. It does not arrive as something vast and crushing. It arrives as intimacy, as nearness, as recognition. The heart does not try to measure the infinite. It simply receives what it is meant to receive. Notice how this already happens in small ways. You can sit in silence and suddenly feel calm without knowing why. You can hear a verse, a line, or even a single word and feel something open inside you. You can look at someone you love and feel a depth that cannot be explained, only known. These are not accidents. They are moments when the heart briefly remembers its true function. The mind wants clarity through explanation. The heart recognizes truth through resonance. This is why some things make sense without being logical and some truths feel certain without being provable. The heart does not argue, it witnesses. Ibn Arabi taught that when the heart is turned inward toward the unseen, it begins to recognize signs everywhere. Not because the world has changed, but because perception has matured. Events are no longer judged only by comfort or discomfort. They are understood as movements within a larger wisdom. Even difficulty becomes intelligible, not always immediately, but eventually. Have you ever looked back at a hardship and realized it carried guidance you could not have accepted at the time? That is the heart recognizing meaning after the dust has settled. That is the horizon clearing. And this brings us to an important distinction. Seeing the infinite does not mean constant bliss. It does not mean life becomes easy or pain disappears. It means life becomes coherent. Even sorrow has a place. Even waiting has a reason. Even unanswered prayers are understood as responses shaped differently than expected. The heart that begins to see in this way feels wider, less reactive, less desperate to control outcomes. It trusts without becoming passive. It acts without becoming anxious. It moves through the world with an inner steadiness that does not depend on circumstances. But this state does not arrive all at once. It begins quietly, often unnoticed. A subtle shift in how you interpret what happens to you, a pause before reacting, a sense that something is being taught rather than taken. And when this shift begins, even slightly, the world appears unchanged, but you are not. This is what Ibn Arabi meant when he spoke of the heart's vastness. Not that it contains everything, but that it is capable of recognizing what truly matters. And once this recognition begins, perception itself starts to soften and deepen. The same streets, the same faces, the same struggles, but now, They are seen through a different lens, one that does not deny reality, but quietly reveals its hidden coherence. And it is here, in this subtle transformation, that the eye of the heart begins to awaken. There comes a moment, often subtle, easily overlooked, when nothing in your surroundings changes, yet something within you does. You wake up on an ordinary morning. The same light enters the room. The same sounds drift through the air. The same responsibilities wait. And yet the day feels different, not lighter in a dramatic way, just clearer. You step outside and notice the air on your skin. A tree moves gently in the wind, not demanding your attention, yet holding it. The street is quiet for a brief moment, and in that stillness your breath slows. You are not trying to feel spiritual. You are simply present. And in that presence, life feels strangely coherent, as if the pieces are no longer fighting each other. This is how the eye of the heart begins to open, not with spectacle, but with recognition. Ibn Arabi taught that when the heart starts to see, it does not escape the world. It sees through it. Forms remain forms, but meanings become visible. You look at your own impatience, and instead of condemning yourself, you sense the fear beneath it. You hear someone speak sharply and recognize the pain shaping their words. You encounter a delay and feel frustration, but also an invitation to slow down. These shifts do not make you passive, they make you precise. You respond rather than react. You listen before assuming. You pause long enough to choose. Have you noticed moments like this? Times when your usual triggers lose some of their power, when something that once unsettled you now passes more quickly. This is not emotional numbness. It is discernment. The heart is beginning to separate surface disturbance from deeper truth. Ibn Arabi described this state as clarity without effort. Not because effort is no longer required, but because the heart is no longer divided. When attention is gathered, life stops feeling scattered. You no longer feel pulled in 10 directions at once. You feel oriented. This orientation changes how you experience hardship. A difficulty still hurts, but it no longer feels meaningless. A disappointment still stings, but it does not define you. You begin to sense that life is not happening to you, but with you, guiding, shaping, teaching. This does not mean every moment is peaceful. Some days still feel heavy. Some prayers still feel dry. But even dryness is understood differently. It becomes a season rather than a verdict, a process rather than a failure. The eye of the heart, when it opens, does not flood you with certainty. It gives you enough clarity to keep walking without panic. Enough trust to remain steady without needing guarantees. And slowly you begin to notice something else. Your inner world becomes quieter, not empty but ordered. Thoughts arise, but they no longer overwhelm. Emotions move, but they do not dominate. You start to recognize the difference between what passes through you and what truly belongs to you. This is where Ibn Arabi's wisdom becomes practical rather than poetic. The heart that sees does not deny the outer world. It simply refuses to be imprisoned by it. And as perception shifts in this way, a natural question arises. If this clarity is possible, if the heart can learn to see like this, then what allows it to stay open? What sustains this way of seeing beyond fleeting moments? The answer, Ibn Arabi insisted, does not begin with effort alone. It begins with return. When Ibn Arabi spoke about remembrance, he was not describing a mechanical act. He was describing a movement of the heart, a return, not returning to words but returning to center. Remembrance in its truest form is not about how often you repeat a name. It is about where your attention rests when you do. Many people remember Allah with their tongues while their hearts are elsewhere. Their lips move, but their minds are busy rehearsing conversations, replaying worries, planning outcomes. This is not wrong. It is human. But Ibn Arabi would say it is incomplete. The mirror is being touched, but not yet cleaned. True remembrance begins when you notice where you are and gently come back, not with force, not with frustration, with patience. The heart is not commanded into clarity. It is invited. Imagine sitting quietly even for a few minutes. No dramatic posture, no expectation, just your breath steady and natural. You place your hand over your chest not as a ritual but as a reminder of where attention belongs. You whisper the name of Allah softly, slowly, not to finish a count but to feel the sound settle. At first the mind wanders. This is normal. You notice and you return, again and again. Each return is remembrance. Ibn Arabi emphasized that one moment of presence outweighs hours of heedless repetition. The heart does not respond to noise. It responds to sincerity. When remembrance is real, even briefly, the heart softens. You may feel it as warmth or spaciousness or simply quiet. There is no need to analyze it. The effect is subtle but cumulative. Over time, this return begins to change how the heart relates to life. You start to notice when your inner state shifts. You catch yourself before reacting. You sense when you are being pulled outward too strongly. Remembrance becomes less of an activity and more of an orientation. But Ibn Arabi was careful to say that remembrance alone does not polish the mirror completely. It loosens the dust, but other veils remain, especially the ones we defend. One of the heaviest of these veils is pride. Not the obvious kind that announces itself, but the quiet kind that resists being wrong. The kind that clings to self-image. The kind that turns every correction into an insult. Pride tightens the heart, and a tight heart cannot reflect clearly. Humility, on the other hand, relaxes the surface. It allows the heart to admit its need, to say, without shame, "I do not see clearly yet." Ibn Arabi taught that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking less about yourself. It is the willingness to be taught by life rather than challenged by it. As humility grows, another shift becomes possible: detachment. Detachment, in Ibn Arabi's understanding, is not abandonment of the world. It is freedom from being owned by it. You still work, you still love, you still plan, but your heart no longer clings. You use what is given without letting it define you. You accept what leaves without collapsing. This lightness is not indifference, it is trust. When the heart is no longer weighed down by constant grasping, it becomes spacious. And in that spaciousness, remembrance deepens naturally. Silence begins to appear between thoughts. The heart listens instead of speaking. It waits instead of demanding. And it is here, in this quiet widening, that something essential begins to happen. The heart becomes capable of holding more, not more things, but more meaning. And with that capacity, perception itself prepares to shift once again. As the heart learns to return through remembrance, another truth becomes difficult to ignore. Some veils do not fall through repetition alone. They loosen only when the way you hold yourself in the world begins to change. Humility is often misunderstood. It is not weakness, nor is it self-erasure. It is clarity. It is the moment you stop defending an image of yourself and allow life to teach you. A humble heart does not collapse under correction, it listens. It does not rush to justify itself, it pauses. In humility, the heart becomes teachable, and a teachable heart begins to see. Notice how pride operates quietly. It tightens the chest when you feel misunderstood. It urges you to speak when silence would reveal more. It compares your path to others and measures worth by recognition. Pride makes the heart vigilant and tense, always guarding something, and a guarded heart cannot reflect clearly. When humility enters, the surface relaxes. The heart no longer needs to prove its value. It can admit confusion without fear. It can say, "I don't know," and remain steady. In that steadiness, perception widens. You stop seeing life as a series of personal judgments and begin seeing it as guidance unfolding. Detachment follows humility naturally, not detachment from responsibility or love, but from possession and fear. You begin to hold outcomes lightly. You work without worshiping results. You care without clinging. You give without calculating return. Detachment frees the heart from the constant strain of control. Think of how much energy is spent trying to secure what cannot be secured: approval, certainty, permanence. Detachment does not deny these desires, it releases their grip. When the heart loosens its hold, anxiety softens. When anxiety softens, awareness deepens. And then there is silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of unnecessary inner commentary. A heart filled with arguments, rehearsals, and judgments is loud even in a quiet room. Silence appears when the need to narrate everything fades, when the heart trusts enough to simply observe. In silence, perception changes again. You begin to notice subtleties, the tone beneath words, the intention beneath actions, the lesson beneath inconvenience. Silence allows the heart to listen to what was always speaking quietly. And finally, love completes the widening. Love in this path is not sentiment alone. It is recognition. It is the capacity to see beyond surface behavior into shared fragility, to recognize that others struggle as you do, hide as you do, long as you do. Love dissolves harsh edges. It softens judgment. It allows the heart to remain open even when life is difficult. When humility removes rigidity, detachment removes weight, silence removes noise, and love expands capacity, the heart becomes spacious. Not empty but receptive, not passive but alive. In that spaciousness, the eye of the heart does not strain to see. It sees naturally. Meaning is no longer hunted. It reveals itself. You begin to sense wisdom in timing, mercy in delay, guidance in discomfort, not because everything feels good, but because everything feels coherent, connected. This is what it means for the heart to become clear enough to see. Not extraordinary visions, not escape from life, but a steady awareness that life is not random and you are not abandoned within it. And when the heart reaches this state, even briefly, it recognizes something quietly profound. What it has been searching for was never distant. It was waiting for space. When the heart becomes spacious, something unexpected happens. You stop searching for signs, and yet signs begin to appear everywhere. Not as messages written in the sky, not as dramatic revelations, but as quiet recognitions woven into ordinary life. You notice how events seem to arrive with a certain precision. A conversation you needed appears at the right moment. A delay prevents a mistake you only understand later. A loss, painful at first, slowly reshapes you into someone more grounded, more honest, more awake. The heart that sees does not rush to label these moments as good or bad. It asks instead, what is being taught here? This is what Ibn Arabi meant when he spoke of the heart seeing the infinite. It is not that the heart comprehends everything. It is that it recognizes coherence. It senses that life is not a series of disconnected events, but a flowing movement shaped by wisdom. The infinite is not grasped, it is reflected. When you look at a tree with the eyes alone, you see wood and leaves. When the heart is awake, you sense sustenance, balance, patience. You see how it stands without complaint, rooted without rigidity, giving without calculation. The tree has not changed. Your way of seeing has. When you look at another person, the eyes may register differences, status, opinions, behavior. The heart, when clear, notices something deeper, the shared vulnerability, the same longing for peace, the same fear of being unseen. This does not excuse harm or erase boundaries, but it softens the inner posture. Judgment loosens. Compassion becomes possible. Even your own struggles begin to look different. Anxiety is no longer just an enemy. It becomes a signal that trust is being asked of you. Restlessness becomes an invitation to return inward. Failure becomes a teacher rather than a verdict. You still feel pain, but it no longer isolates you from meaning. This way of seeing does not remove responsibility. It deepens it. You become more careful with your words, more patient with timing, more honest with yourself. You stop demanding that life conform to your expectations and begin aligning yourself with what life is asking of you. The infinite in this sense is not an object of belief. It is a presence recognized through relationship, through lived moments, through attention refined by humility and remembrance. And this recognition brings a quiet steadiness. You no longer feel abandoned in uncertainty. You no longer panic when answers do not arrive immediately. You understand that clarity unfolds, often slowly, often in retrospect. The heart learns to wait without despair. This is not constant serenity. There are still days when the mirror feels dusty again, when old habits return, when distractions reclaim attention. But now you recognize what is happening. You know the way back. You know that clarity is not lost forever. It is simply waiting for space. The heart that sees the infinite does not escape the world. It inhabits it more fully. It works, loves, struggles, and rests with an underlying awareness that nothing is wasted. Nothing is meaningless. Nothing is outside the reach of wisdom. And with this awareness, a final understanding settles quietly into place. The infinite was never hidden behind complexity. It was hidden behind hurry. Slow down enough, and the heart remembers how to see. And this brings us naturally to the final pause of our journey. Not a conclusion, but a turning back toward your own life, where this seeing must now be lived. As you return to your own life, nothing outward needs to change. The same responsibilities will be there, the same people, the same routines, and yet something subtle has been offered, an invitation to look differently, to notice what your heart has been reflecting and what it may be ready to release. You do not need to search for the infinite in distant places or extraordinary moments. It reveals itself quietly, in patience learned through delay, in trust formed through uncertainty, in meaning recognized long after an event has passed. The heart that sees does not rush. It listens. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever experienced a small, ordinary moment in your life that later revealed a deeper meaning you couldn't see at the time? If this reflection resonated with you, support the channel by liking this video, subscribing to Voice of Sufism, and turning on the bell icon so you don't miss future reflections. I invite you to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your reflection may be exactly what someone else needs to read. You'll also see related videos appearing on screen now. Let them guide you deeper into this journey of awareness, patience, and inner clarity. And as you move forward, remember this gently. The heart was always capable of seeing. It was only waiting for you to slow down enough to notice.